Hello, everyone. Welcome to another segment of Speak Your Piece. I'm Memory Pines, and this is a segment from Above and Beyond. Above and Beyond is a treatment facility located at 2942 West Lake Street. It's actually a family recovery center because people's families recover when the individual who seeks help seek and get their help from there. It's such a lovely place to be a part of. Today they had a luncheon, and yesterday a graduation. There's always something going on there, and if you're looking for help, remember Above and Beyond, 2942 West Lake Street. It's a harm reduction facility, and you'll be doing yourself a favor. And if you know someone, please send them to that address. Again, 2942 West Lake Street. We have a lot of things going on there. They help them get from the bottom up. Social Security cards, birth certificates. They try to get them into housing, into trades, and eventually employment and self-sufficiency. So I wanted to tell you all about Above and Beyond, to give the first shout out. But also we do linkages with other people, and we talk about the things that's going on within the community. And there's a lot of different things going on there. But right now, I got a full panel. I'm excited. We're going to talk about fathers in our communities. We're going to talk about Juneteenth and some other things that that's real important for us to grow as a community. So we're going to start right here with this gentleman right to my left. I would like for you to introduce yourself, sir.
How you doing? I'm David Ali. Been a lifelong friend and memory. I've been knowing her all of my life, from grammar school until just a moment ago. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys, and I'm looking forward to a spirited conversation.
And this gentleman here?
So my name is Thaddeus Williams. I have worked in the field of addictions for probably 50 years, not just substance abuse addictions, also a trauma coach. Most agencies on the west side of Chicago, the Dorado Hospital. I was actually the first trauma coach they had at Above and Beyond. And so I'm just happy to be here. I met Memory about a year and a half ago, was so impressed with who she is and just the substantive aspects that she brings to most groups that I'm just happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
All right, and then my next guest.
I'm Eric Arnold, and I am also a part of Above and Beyond. I provide services there. I am an addiction therapist. Mental health is part of my specialty as well, working with trauma patients who have been inflicted by events that have occurred throughout their lives. And we just do a lot of good work over there Above and Beyond with the community.
And getting back to what, like I was saying, I'm real excited about talking with these gentlemen about being fathers and what that means in our community and what that looks like for them. So again, maybe we'll start with you, Thaddeus. What does fatherhood look like for you? And what is needed in our community for fathers?
Wow. I mean, that's a real complicated question, but essentially, when you asked me about father, I remember when I first became a father. It was frightening as hell. It was scary to become responsible for someone other than yourself. When I say responsible, I just don't mean like physically responsible, emotionally responsible, financially responsible. To know that when you bring a child on this earth, that you're responsible for them for the next 21 years, but probably for the rest of their lives. I remember when we were headed to the hospital, my wife then, I was walking out the door with the bags, and a voice came to me and said, "He is for the joy." And my first child was really a joy for me. And I didn't have a great model. I mean, my dad died when I was 5 years old, so what I saw in terms of parenting came actually from my mom. I mean, And so, you know, it wasn't like I had a good parameter for fatherhood, and which I suspect for a lot of people in impoverished or underserved communities, that's exactly the same thing. Like, they don't have the greatest models. Fathers may not have stayed around. So it's something that you don't get by modeling. It's something that it's either internally, and you're lucky if you get someone that you can see who is a good model for a father figure. I know when I'm driving on the west side of Chicago, and I usually see these younger men walking their children to school or carrying them, I usually stop my car and go, man, they don't show us like that on television, because they don't show us being great fathers that way. So any chance you get for modeling, that you can model for these younger men for fatherhood, I think we have an obligation and a moral responsibility.
Let me ask you, David. Now, he was saying modeling. How would you model fatherhood to someone?
Well, just like that, it said that is a very, very complicated question, but I'll give it to you like this from my perspective. Being born and raised in Ida Wells, I could say I could probably only count 2 or 3 guys that I grew up with that had a father in the house. I was fortunate enough to have my father in my life and in the house with us.
Speak up.
And in the house with us. And I can remember friends coming over to the house, memory, and seeing my father in the house and asking me, who was that?
Right.
But it didn't dawn on me at that time that I was really the only one in my immediate group that had a father. So it was strange for them to come in the house and see a man present. And so I said that to say this. Just like that, it said, if you don't see it, it becomes hard to be it.
Yeah, I remember my father in Ida Wells. He was the father for the whole block at times.
Yes.
And he would rescue and save a whole lot of people.
Yes.
And people appreciated him for that. Because he showed them how to get up, and a man was going to work every day. And he did that. You know, we got into a lot of things. But, but he was there. He was there. Eric, you know, I really get to hear your piece on it, because your kids, my kids,
Right,
you know.
I know.
You know,
we go way back, back. And as you know, my children, when I think about fatherhood, you know, my model was actually one of my next door neighbors. Because when I was a little boy, Ida Wells was still family oriented. It still had that family twang to it in the 60s. You know what I'm saying? And you know, there was still Mr. and Mrs. You know, living in the houses. They had raised their children, and their children had went on, and they were still living in the project. So I got an opportunity to see that model of marriage, fatherhood, grandfatherhood, you know, through their examples and the way that they carried themselves. Now, they were a little more stoic than I would have cared to be, which I wasn't. They weren't as open and talkative as we are as parents, but they were there to show that they were the backbone, and they took care of the responsibilities. And that was one of the things that I learned about fatherhood, is being responsible. You know, I heard something said once, and it was a quote from actually a movie that Sidney Poitier was in, and he told his dad, he said, you know what, I don't owe you nothing. You owe me everything. I didn't ask to be here. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I look at my children. They didn't ask to be here. You know, and it's part of my responsibility to give them the tools that they need to be the person that they can grow up and possibly become independent and take care of their own one day as well. So, you know, that's what I look for. That's my
and you're funny
definition.
that you said that, because I tell my sons and daughters, I tell them, I say, I don't have monetary things to give you. What I have, you welcome. You know, they welcome to it.
Right.
But what I have is information. And if I don't, you know, what I tell you or try to get you to understand or try to feed to you, these are the things that I'm giving you the information,
Right.
and what you do with it is what you do with it.
But
But-
you know,
Go ahead, Dave.
it's kind of difficult to have that conversation about fatherhood and not, especially when it comes to our community, the black community, black and probably brown community as well. But it's kind of difficult to have that conversation without remembering the difficulties that our families had, particularly in the 60s and the 70s when men were being forced out the house.
Right.
Because that had a generational effect on us. And then we could still see that effect today with these younger, with our younger community. Because driving the fathers out of the houses
Oh yeah.
had a profound effect on us.
Sure.
And so I mean, our communities basically was left without men to guard the communities, and then the drugs come into the communities. And so we're living that experience right now. We're trying to correct that right now, and we look at our young and we wonder what's wrong with them. But it just didn't happen today. It started yesterday.
Oh yeah.
But-
and a lot of them now are crack babies, as we
Right.
say, and so they wasn't parented
Right.
because
They
the
wasn't
parents.
fathered.
Drugs.
Not just the mothers too.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, they wasn't parented like they were supposed to be. They wasn't nourished like they were supposed to be, and we getting the results of it.
Absolutely.
But some of them out there are well worth. All of them out there are well worth the effort.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I don't
Absolutely.
believe that there's
Absolutely.
no such thing as a bad child. You know, that's my specialty. You know, I have an organization called Life Builders, and we work specifically with at-risk youth to help provide them with information to help them to start making better choices. And it's through that information, through us breaking through those barriers and peeling back the onion to that we began to, you know, identify some of the challenges and the issues that have been affecting them and plaguing them. You know, David had made a great point when he just said about the fathers were removed. All that stuff was systemic. It was planned.
Yeah.
Because
No
there's
accident.
no way that the drugs could have came in our community had the men been on deck the way that they were. You know, if men would have been able to been there to protect the families, drugs couldn't have came in the way that they did and flooded our community and destroyed that generation when it came in. Because prior to that, we had drug addicts and alcoholics, but they were men primarily. You had one or two women. And then when cocaine, crack showed up in our communities, mothers became addicts. And when mothers became addicts,
Oh, my
the
God,
family
it was
system
over.
failed.
It was over.
You know, so
It was over.
it was designed.
So let me ask you, Thaddeus, how would you go about restructuring, getting families back together, getting individuals to see where we've broken down at and rebuilding? How would we go about that? How do we get to our youth? As Eric said, he's got this Life Builders, in which I've heard is quite successful.
Eric said I was his first teacher. Actually, then he hired me to work for Life Builders. So I actually worked for him in the school systems. He had me primarily working at Crane and CVS.
Right.
I mean, again, it's so systemic. It's cultural. It's historical. These problems that we face with now, it didn't even start back in the 60s. This started back with slavery and the whole idea of lynching. And I know when you have conversations like this, it kind of makes some people uncomfortable because they want to say, well, these are excuses. And, you know, let's not talk about slavery. Let's just deal with now. But in order to resolve what's happening now, I think you got to go back to what happened then. And one of the people I really like is Joyce DeGruy, the woman who wrote the book Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder, where she's talked specifically about how these things started and how they got situated. Now, one of the things that, you know, Eric and I had talked about in terms of helping these kids, because their minds that got so polluted with the music and the violence and social media. And when they locked up at least 2.5 million people during that period of time, when those people got out of prisons, they brought that jail mentality out to the society, right? Because there doesn't appear to be an attempt to rehabilitate folks in prison.
Well, I got to stop you because I got to disagree with you about the music. Because I believe that the music, because I have those young sons and they rap. And I believe that was a way of getting out some of the frustration. Expressing themselves, where they at and how they feel about different situations. Because some of it is not all bang, bang, we gonna kill you.
Totally agree with you, Liz. Because, I came up in New York City, right? So when music, hip hop, right, the founder of this, it was all about, like, let's talk about what folks are not talking about happening in the community.
Right.
Let's talk about the poverty. Let's talk about the underserved communities. Let's talk about it in a way where people on the outside can see what the dissension is and how we experience it. But then it got to where people wanted to make money off of it. And then it became gangster rap. And then it became, I'm shooting this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Because for me, when we first started with rap, I even let my kids listen to it. In fact, I gave it a name. I called it rhythmic American poetry. I was like, listen, we need to call it something, right? Because that's when it had a vibe and a message and a concern. But then it turned to guns and drugs and violence. And that's what I mean. I don't mean the generational rap that we listen to. I mean, sometimes what these kids listen to with... And I don't want to focus just on the music because it isn't even just that. Again, this is all this. It's not having enough money in the community to serve these kids. When Eric and I were working together, one of the things we said we wanted to do is these kids have. It's difficult to be a child in this society, right?
Right.
Because there's so many things that's going to be dissuading them. One of the things we talked about doing is we need just as many mental health people in the school systems to work with the teachers as teachers because of what these kids are faced with.
On a daily basis.
On a daily basis. Drugs in their families. Parents are drug addicts, alcoholics, right? And the crime they say, I was sharing with the brother out there some time ago, I worked a lot on the west side of Chicago, and there was a situation where I'm driving by on Holman in Chicago Avenue about 5 years ago. It's 3 kids that's gotten shot down on the streets, right? The bodies are laying there. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the kids are getting out of school walking by the bodies. I got out of my car to tell the police, man, can you please cover up these bodies so these kids don't have to witness this. There were other adults sitting there, standing there, right?
Yeah,
it's
but they don't care how they traumatize our kids.
And I get it.
And don't. They do a lot of that. Like,
I get it.
They do not.
I'm not blaming the memory. I'm just saying that if you ask me, that's part of the problem is this desensitization that these kids experience and the traumatic experience that the adults have had to go through. Gunshots. I mean, people walking past you on the street, if you're a black male, like you thinking, okay, is it going to be some stuff, right? Somebody walking behind you, you got to feel like, well, okay, do I need to walk across? It's like, we experienced it. I'm running with a friend of mine in Winnetka, man, right? And so it's a guy behind us. It's in Winnetka, right? He got a hoodie on, and I had to let's stop and let him run by us. And my friend's attorney, he's like, what's wrong with you? It's like, I don't want nobody running behind me with a hoodie on.
Oh, well.
Right? That's the trauma I'm talking about.
Let me ask you now, David, I know that you have a great following with Facebook. And you support a lot of people through that site. How do you reach these teenagers? Because I noticed that a lot of them are on your page.
Right. Well, I think that education, and when I speak of education, I'm talking about just like we sat here for a moment and we were talking about what we witnessed as kids coming up and what affected us in the long-term effect that it had on us in terms of being fathers today. We have to re-educate our youth. And what I mean by that is that we cannot depend on the school system to make them to understand the generation of trauma that we done been through. We have to re-educate our children and let them know where they came from in order to get a better result today from in as far as their behavior.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Education in the school system. I remember when I was in grammar school and I wanted to learn about the stock markets because, I always wanted to know about different things. And they told me I didn't need to know that.
Oh,
that
wow.
I was never going to be able to use that. But, that's the thing. But we wind down and to the people out in the audience and I guess on the airwaves, this is Speak Your Piece. My name again is Memory, and these are some gentlemen who has brought some good conversation here. And we are excited about doing things in the community. I met Thaddeus at a group called the Think Tank, and they're really the think tank. And when I went in there, there's some minds in there that you would not believe. And the conversation is about everything. They talk about everything, and they're always trying to improve the community and can improve your thought process. So when once the mind is fed, anything is possible. And I want to go back to Above and Beyond. They have a lot of different groups that helps people. We have Herman Russell he's just leading the group, leading different groups, and we have Steve. If I name just everybody,
Brain on drugs.
Brain on drugs.
Right. The neurological aspects of drugs.
It's
trauma.
We got Bunny. We got Phil, Dan, Brian. If you come there, they're gonna help you where you start, where you need help at, and it'll move from there. And again, once again, do yourself a favor. Help yourself or help somebody else. And one thing I want to say, and I always say this here, the life you save may well be your own. And that's important. I want to thank these guys to come out. I wish we had a longer period of time. Final thought.
Well, I mean, I believe that the work in the community starts with self. It starts with self stepping out and being that person. My grandmother always told me when people were bellowing, somebody needs to do this, somebody needs to do that. She said, well, why can't that somebody be you? And that's what I do.
Final thought.
I've always been endeared by just watching you out there in the garden with those kids. And I think if people could be a lot more like just what I see you modeling with those young men who would help you work in the garden, and how they responded to the love and the kindness that you gave them, that would be the star for me.
Thank you, Thaddeus.
Yes, true.
That's heartfelt. Dave, final thought.
My final thought is I would like to invite everybody out on Father's Day to Ellis Park, 3700 Cottage Grove, to our Father's Day picnic. It is a picnic that was started. It's a cookout that was started in 2003, and just a group of us men down from the public housing got together, and we decided to celebrate ourselves because, to be honest with you, this country really don't celebrate Father's Day like Mother's Day. No disrespect, but we decided to take it upon ourselves to celebrate ourselves and to come out in the community and break bread with one another and be an example to our younger generation that's watching us, because you never know who's watching you.
Right.
And so we decided to celebrate ourselves, and in hopes that these young men see us and how we celebrate fatherhood, and would like to, maybe mimic us.
Well, I wish we had a longer period of time. This was Speak Your Piece, and I have enjoyed my company this evening. And thank you all. And everyone, take care. And the next time we'll have call-ins, and I'm very excited about the next episode. And you also, in a week or two, you can watch this episode on YouTube. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.